Insurance fraud seems like easy money until you realize that insurance companies hire investigators specifically to catch people faking injuries. These people learned that lesson the hard way. 1. A man in California claimed he'd been injured in a car accident and had severe back pain that left him unable to work or perform basic activities. He filed for disability benefits and a lawsuit against the other driver seeking $500,000 for his injuries. Medical records showed he'd been examined and diagnosed with back strain. He wore a back brace to court appearances and used a cane. Insurance investigators became suspicious when his claimed injuries seemed inconsistent with the relatively minor accident. They hired a private investigator to conduct surveillance. The investigator followed him for 2 weeks and captured video footage of him playing basketball with friends, lifting heavy boxes while helping someone move, and going jet skiing. The footage showed him moving without any apparent pain or limitation. When confronted with the surveillance video at his deposition, he claimed those were good days where his pain was less severe. But medical experts testified that someone with the severe back injury he claimed couldn't perform those activities even on good days. The lawsuit was dismissed, his disability claim was denied, and he was charged with insurance fraud. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to probation and ordered to pay $15,000 in restitution for the money already paid out. His attempt to fake a back injury was destroyed by surveillance footage, showing him doing exactly the things he claimed he couldn't do. 2. A woman working at a retail store claimed she'd slipped on a wet floor and injured her knee, making her unable to walk without crutches. She filed a workers' compensation claim seeking payment for medical bills and lost wages. She attended physical therapy appointments using crutches and told doctors her knee pain was severe. The company's insurance investigator reviewed her social media accounts and found photos and videos she'd posted showing her hiking, running, and dancing at a wedding, all activities posted after the supposed injury. The videos showed her moving normally with no crutches, no limp, and no apparent pain. When presented with the social media evidence, she claimed those posts were old and she'd just reshared them. But the posts had current dates and included comments from friends about recent events. Her workers' comp claim was denied. She was fired from her job for fraud, and she was charged with filing a false claim. She was convicted and sentenced to community service and probation. Her fake knee injury was exposed because she couldn't resist posting her actual activities on Instagram. 3. A man claimed he'd suffered a severe shoulder injury at work that left his arm essentially useless. He said he couldn't lift more than 5 pounds and needed surgery. He filed for workers' compensation and long-term disability. Medical evaluations confirmed he had limited range of motion and claimed severe pain with any arm movement. Insurance investigators became suspicious when doctors noted his physical limitations seemed inconsistent across different examinations. Surveillance was ordered. Investigators captured footage of him at a shooting range firing rifles, which requires significant shoulder strength and stability. The video showed him shooting for over an hour with no apparent difficulty. He was also filmed washing his car, carrying groceries, and doing yard work, all activities requiring extensive use of the arm he claimed was disabled. When confronted, he said he'd been trying to work through the pain. Medical experts testified that the activities captured on video were impossible for someone with his claimed injury. His workers' comp was terminated, his disability claim was denied, and he was charged with fraud. He was convicted and ordered to pay back $40,000 in benefits he'd already received, plus fines. His fake shoulder injury was exposed by surveillance, showing him doing activities requiring exactly the shoulder function he claimed not to have. 4. A woman claimed she'd been injured in a slip-and-fall accident at a grocery store and sustained a traumatic brain injury that caused memory problems, confusion, and inability to work. She sued the store for $1 million. She appeared at medical evaluations, seeming confused and forgetful. She claimed she couldn't remember basic information and had difficulty concentrating. The store's insurance company hired a neuropsychologist to conduct cognitive testing. The psychologist noticed she performed worse than people with actual severe brain injuries and worse than chance on certain tests, meaning she was deliberately answering incorrectly. The pattern of her mistakes was statistically impossible for genuine cognitive impairment. She was also caught on surveillance cameras appearing completely normal before and after medical appointments, including having coherent, detailed conversations on her cell phone. The neuropsychologist testified that her test results proved she was faking, called malingering. The lawsuit was dismissed, she was charged with fraud, and had to pay the store's legal costs. Her fake brain injury was exposed by medical testing that proved she was deliberately performing poorly. 5. A man working in construction claimed he'd injured his back lifting heavy materials and could no longer work. He filed for workers' compensation and disability benefits. He attended medical appointments in a wheelchair and told doctors he had severe pain and couldn't stand for more than a few minutes. His claim was approved and he began receiving benefits. Anonymous tips to the insurance company suggested he was faking. Investigators conducted surveillance and filmed him competing in a strongman competition, lifting hundreds of pounds, carrying heavy objects, and performing athletic feats that would be impossible with the back injury he claimed. The video showed him not just walking without difficulty, but performing extreme physical activities. When confronted with the footage, he claimed he'd been in a wheelchair earlier that day, and the competition was a one-time thing, where adrenaline overcame his pain. Medical experts testified that no amount of adrenaline allows someone with a severe disabling back injury to compete in strength competitions. His benefits were terminated, he was fired from his job, and he was prosecuted for fraud. He was convicted and sentenced to jail time, plus ordered to repay over $60,000 in fraudulent benefits. His fake back injury was destroyed by footage of him literally competing in strength athletics. 6. A woman claimed she'd developed carpal tunnel syndrome from her office job and could no longer type or use her hands for repetitive tasks. She filed for workers' compensation and sought accommodation from her employer. Medical examinations showed some signs of carpal tunnel, but doctors noted her symptoms seemed exaggerated. She wore wrist braces and claimed she couldn't even hold a coffee cup without pain. Her employer's insurance company hired investigators who discovered she was running an Etsy shop from home selling handmade jewelry. The work required detailed hand coordination and hours of repetitive finger movements, exactly the activities she claimed she couldn't perform. Investigators purchased items from her shop that were made and shipped during the period she was claiming total disability from hand use. When confronted with evidence of her Etsy business, she claimed her mother was actually making the items. But investigators had screenshots of her social media posts showing herself crafting the jewelry. Her workers' comp was denied, she was fired, and charged with fraud. She pleaded guilty and was placed on probation with restitution. Her fake carpal tunnel was exposed by her own online business, requiring the exact hand function she claimed not to have. 7. A man claimed he'd been rear-ended in a car accident and suffered whiplash, leaving him with chronic neck pain and headaches. He sued the other driver for $200,000. He wore a neck brace to court and medical appointments. He told doctors he couldn't turn his head, look up or down, or engage in any activity requiring neck movement. The defense attorney hired investigators who conducted surveillance. Video footage showed him working as a construction supervisor on a job site, constantly looking up at buildings and craning his neck to see work being done on upper floors. He was filmed turning his head in all directions to supervise workers and inspect job sites. The video showed him moving his neck freely with no apparent pain or limitation. When the surveillance video was shown at his deposition, he claimed those were brief moments and he suffered greatly afterward. But the footage showed hours of normal neck movement across multiple days. Medical experts testified that someone with his claimed injury couldn't perform those activities. The lawsuit was dismissed, he was ordered to pay the defendant's legal fees, and was charged with insurance fraud. His fake whiplash was destroyed by surveillance showing him working a job that required exactly the neck mobility he claimed not to have. 8. A woman working at a warehouse claimed she'd hurt her leg in a workplace accident and could only walk with a walker. She filed for workers' compensation and sought disability benefits. She used the walker to attend all medical appointments and told doctors she couldn't put full weight on her leg. Her employer became suspicious when a coworker reported seeing her at a concert, dancing and jumping around. The insurance company reviewed security footage from the concert venue and identified her in the crowd, dancing enthusiastically without any walker or apparent leg problem. They also found social media posts from the same concert, showing her standing in heels for hours. When confronted, she claimed she'd pushed through the pain that one night and suffered for days afterward. Medical experts testified that the activities captured on video were impossible for someone with the injury she described. Her workers' comp claim was denied, she was fired, and charged with filing a false claim. She was convicted and ordered to pay restitution. Her fake leg injury was exposed by concert footage showing her dancing without the walker she claimed to need. 9. A man claimed he'd been in a workplace accident that caused a severe concussion, leaving him with cognitive problems, dizziness, and inability to drive or work. He filed for workers' compensation and long-term disability. Neurological examinations showed some signs consistent with concussion, but doctors noted his symptoms seemed to persist longer than typical. He claimed he had severe memory problems and couldn't focus on tasks. Insurance investigators discovered he was attending law school at night during the period he claimed total cognitive disability. They obtained his academic records, which showed he was earning good grades in challenging courses requiring extensive reading, analysis, and memory. They also found he'd been driving himself to and from classes, something he claimed he couldn't do due to dizziness and cognitive problems. When confronted with his law school attendance, he said studying was therapeutic and helped his recovery. But medical experts testified that succeeding in law school courses is incompatible with the cognitive disability he'd claimed. His benefits were terminated, he was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. He was convicted and ordered to repay nearly $80,000 in fraudulent benefits. His fake concussion was exposed by the fact that he was simultaneously earning law school grades while claiming he couldn't think clearly enough to work. 10. A woman claimed she'd slipped and fallen at a big box store and injured her hip, requiring a cane to walk. She sued the store for $500,000, claiming the injury would affect her for life. She attended all court appearances and depositions using a cane and walking with a pronounced limp. The store's legal team hired investigators who followed her for several weeks. Surveillance footage captured her participating in a 5K charity race, running the entire distance without any cane or limp. The video clearly showed her face and was time-stamped during the period she claimed to need a cane to walk even short distances. When the video was presented at trial, she claimed that was a miracle day where her pain temporarily disappeared. The jury didn't believe her. They found no liability for the store, and the judge sanctioned her for bringing a fraudulent claim. She was also charged criminally with insurance fraud. She was convicted and received probation plus ordered to pay the store's legal costs of over $50,000. Her fake hip injury was destroyed by video of her running a 5K race during the period she claimed she could barely walk. 11. A man working as a delivery driver claimed he'd hurt his back at work and could no longer lift packages. He filed for workers' compensation and was placed on light duty with restrictions against lifting anything over 10 pounds. His employer became suspicious when a manager saw him at a gym. The insurance company hired investigators who filmed him at the gym, lifting weights far exceeding his supposed restrictions. The video showed him deadlifting over 200 pounds, doing squats, and performing exercises requiring significant core and back strength. When confronted, he claimed he was following doctors' orders to strengthen his back through exercise. But his medical restrictions specifically prohibited weightlifting, and his doctors had never authorized gym workouts. Medical experts testified that his gym activities were completely inconsistent with the injury and limitations he'd claimed. His workers' comp was terminated, he was fired for violating medical restrictions, and was charged with fraud. He pleaded guilty and was ordered to repay benefits and serve probation. His fake back injury was exposed by gym surveillance, showing him lifting far more weight than his supposed medical restrictions allowed. 12. A woman claimed she'd been injured as a passenger in a car accident and developed post-traumatic stress disorder that prevented her from riding in cars. She sued multiple parties for $750,000, claiming the psychological trauma was so severe she couldn't travel in vehicles. She attended therapy and told her psychologist she experienced panic attacks at the thought of being in a car. Her medical records documented her claims of severe driving-related PTSD. The defense attorneys hired investigators who discovered she'd taken multiple road trips during the period. She claimed she couldn't ride in cars. Surveillance footage and social media posts showed her on a cross-country road trip, posting photos from inside vehicles and at roadside attractions. She documented entire multi-state driving trips while simultaneously claiming in her lawsuit that she couldn't be in a car without severe panic attacks. When confronted with the evidence, she claimed those trips were attempts at exposure therapy, but her therapist testified she'd never authorized or discussed such trips. The lawsuit was dismissed, she was charged with fraud, and had to pay substantial legal fees. Her fake PTSD was destroyed by her own social media documentation of road trips during the period she claimed she couldn't be in vehicles. 13. A man claimed he'd injured his hands at work with chemical burns that left him unable to use his fingers for detailed tasks. He filed for workers' compensation and sought permanent disability. Medical examinations showed scarring on his hands, and he claimed he couldn't grip objects or perform fine motor tasks. He demonstrated severely limited hand function at medical appointments. Insurance investigators received an anonymous tip that he was still working as a mechanic under the table. Surveillance showed him working on cars, using tools requiring detailed hand coordination, and performing tasks that would be impossible with the hand injury he claimed. The video clearly showed him gripping wrenches, manipulating small parts, and using his fingers with normal dexterity. When confronted, he claimed he was just helping friends with their cars and not actually working, but investigators had evidence he was being paid for the work. His workers' comp was terminated, he was charged with fraud, and prosecutors also charged him with working while collecting disability. He was convicted and sentenced to jail time plus restitution. His fake hand injury was exposed by surveillance, showing him working as a mechanic requiring the exact hand function he claimed not to have. 14. A woman claimed she'd fallen at a restaurant and injured her ankle requiring surgery and leaving her with permanent limitations. She sued the restaurant for $300,000. She appeared at medical appointments and court proceedings with a walking boot and cane. She testified she could no longer participate in activities she'd enjoyed before the injury. The restaurant's insurance company investigated and found she'd been training for and completed a marathon during the period she claimed to have a debilitating ankle injury requiring a boot and cane. Race photos clearly showed her running 26.2 miles without any boot, cane, or apparent ankle problem. The photos were time-stamped and included her bib number, making identification certain. When confronted with the marathon evidence, she claimed she'd run through the pain and suffered for weeks afterward. Medical experts testified that running a marathon is medically impossible for someone with the ankle injury she'd claimed. The lawsuit was dismissed, she was ordered to pay legal fees and was charged with fraud. Her fake ankle injury was destroyed by photographic evidence of her completing a marathon. 15. A man claimed he'd been injured in a work accident that damaged his hearing, leaving him nearly deaf. He filed for workers' compensation and permanent disability. Hearing tests showed significant hearing loss. He wore hearing aids and frequently asked people to repeat themselves. His claim was approved and he began receiving substantial disability payments. The insurance company became suspicious when the pattern of his hearing loss didn't match the type of accident he'd claimed caused it. They hired an investigator who used hidden microphones to test his hearing. The investigator engaged him in conversation at normal speaking volume from behind him, situations where someone with his claimed hearing loss couldn't hear. The man responded normally to quietly spoken statements made from angles where he couldn't see the speaker's lips. He was also filmed having normal conversations on his cell phone at low volume. When audio experts analyzed the recordings, they determined his hearing was normal, and he'd been faking hearing loss. His disability was terminated. He was charged with fraud and was prosecuted. He was convicted and ordered to repay over $100,000 in fraudulent benefits. His fake hearing loss was exposed by investigators testing his actual hearing ability with hidden audio equipment. 16. A woman claimed she'd been in a car accident that caused her to become paralyzed from the waist down. She filed a lawsuit seeking $2 million in damages. She appeared in a wheelchair at all medical appointments and court proceedings. Her medical records documented her claims of complete lower body paralysis. The defense attorneys became suspicious when neurological examinations showed inconsistencies suggesting her paralysis might not be real. They hired investigators who placed surveillance cameras near her home. Footage captured her standing up from her wheelchair when she thought no one was watching, walking normally around her house, and even going for jogs. The video clearly showed she had full use of her legs and was faking paralysis. When the surveillance footage was revealed in court, she claimed she'd experienced a miracle recovery. but the footage was from throughout the period of her supposed paralysis. Medical experts testified that her exam findings were inconsistent with actual paralysis and consistent with faking. The lawsuit was dismissed, she was criminally charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. She was convicted and sentenced to prison time. Her fake paralysis was exposed by surveillance showing her walking and running when she thought no one could see her. 17. A man claimed he'd injured his shoulder at work and had such limited range of motion that he couldn't raise his arm above shoulder height. He filed for workers' compensation and sought permanent partial disability. Physical examinations showed extremely limited shoulder movement, and he claimed severe pain with any attempt to raise his arm. His employer's insurance company hired investigators after coworkers reported seeing him playing softball. Surveillance footage captured him playing in multiple softball games, throwing balls overhand from the outfield and swinging a bat. All activities requiring full shoulder range of motion and strength. The video showed him raising his arm far above his head repeatedly with no apparent pain or limitation. When confronted, he said playing softball was physical therapy his doctor recommended. But his doctor testified he'd never authorized such activities, and they violated his medical restrictions. His workers' comp was terminated, he was fired, and charged with fraud. He was convicted and ordered to pay restitution. His fake shoulder injury was destroyed by video of him playing softball requiring exactly the shoulder mobility he claimed not to have. 18. A woman claimed she'd developed respiratory problems from exposure to chemicals at work, requiring her to use supplemental oxygen. She filed for workers' compensation and long-term disability. She carried an oxygen tank and wore nasal cannula tubing to all medical appointments. Her medical records documented low oxygen saturation levels during office visits. Pulmonary function tests showed reduced capacity. Her claim was approved, and she received substantial benefits. Anonymous tips to the insurance company suggested she was faking. Investigators conducted surveillance and discovered she only used the oxygen tank when going to medical appointments or meeting with investigators. Footage showed her at home and in public without any oxygen equipment, exercising, shopping, and engaging in normal activities. Investigators also discovered she was manipulating the pulse oximeter during medical appointments by holding her breath or using other techniques to create false low readings. Medical experts reviewed the evidence and testified that her pattern of oxygen use was inconsistent with genuine respiratory problems. Her benefits were terminated, she was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. She was convicted and sentenced to probation and ordered to repay over $90,000 in fraudulent benefits. Her fake respiratory problems were exposed by surveillance, showing she only needed oxygen when being observed by medical professionals or investigators. 19. A man claimed he'd been injured in a slip and fall at a hotel and developed chronic pain syndrome that prevented him from working or enjoying life. He sued the hotel for $1.5 million. He testified that he was in constant severe pain and couldn't perform basic activities. His medical records documented his complaints of widespread pain and disability. The hotel's attorneys hired investigators who discovered he was working as a personal fitness trainer, a job requiring physical activity and demonstration of exercises. They obtained video from his clients showing him teaching classes, demonstrating difficult exercises, and engaging in physical activities completely inconsistent with his claimed chronic pain and disability. The videos showed him doing burpees, lifting weights, and performing high-intensity interval training. When confronted with the evidence, he claimed training others was different from doing activities for himself, and that teaching was therapeutic. Medical experts testified that working as an active personal trainer is medically impossible for someone with the chronic pain syndrome he described. The jury found against him, he was ordered to pay the hotel's legal costs, and was charged with fraud. He was convicted and sentenced to probation. His fake chronic pain was destroyed by videos of him working as a fitness trainer, demonstrating physically demanding exercises. 20. A woman claimed she'd been injured in a workplace accident that caused severe migraine headaches triggered by light, sound, and stress, preventing her from working. She filed for workers' compensation and disability benefits. She wore dark sunglasses to all appointments and claimed she had to stay in dark, quiet rooms most of the time. Her medical records documented her reports of debilitating migraines occurring multiple times per week. Her claim was approved, and she began receiving benefits. The insurance company became suspicious when they couldn't find evidence of her seeking specialized migraine treatment. Investigators discovered she was working as a wedding DJ, a job requiring her to be in bright lights, loud music, and high-stress environments for hours at a time. Exactly the conditions she claimed triggered debilitating migraines. Surveillance footage showed her performing at multiple weddings, dancing, exposed to flashing lights and loud music with no apparent problems. When confronted, she claimed the DJ work was helping her build tolerance to triggers. But medical experts testified that someone with her claimed migraine condition couldn't work as a DJ in wedding environments. Her benefits were terminated, she was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. Her fake migraines were exposed by evidence of her working in the exact environments she claimed triggered her disabling headaches. 21. A man claimed he'd injured his knee at work and needed surgery plus would have permanent limitations. He filed for workers' compensation. Medical examinations showed knee damage and he underwent surgery. During recovery, he claimed he couldn't walk without assistance and needed crutches. His employer's insurance company hired investigators after receiving tips that he was more mobile than claimed. Surveillance footage captured him hiking mountain trails without crutches or any apparent knee problems. The video showed him navigating rough terrain, going up and down steep inclines, and walking for miles. Activities that would be medically impossible during the recovery period after his surgery with his claimed limitations. When confronted, he claimed those were short, easy walks, and the video made it look more strenuous than it was. But hiking records showed the trails were advanced level and covered significant elevation. His surgeon testified that the activities captured on video violated post-surgical restrictions and should have been impossible if his knee injury was as severe as he claimed. His workers' comp was reduced, he was charged with fraud for exaggerating his limitations and was convicted. His fake knee limitations were exposed by surveillance, showing him hiking difficult trails during his supposedly limited recovery period. 22. A woman claimed she'd been rear-ended in traffic and developed fibromyalgia from the accident, causing widespread pain and fatigue. She sued the other driver for $400,000. She testified she could barely function and spent most days in bed. Her medical records showed numerous complaints of pain throughout her body and severe fatigue. The defense attorneys investigated and discovered she was competing in dance competitions. They obtained video from dance competition organizers showing her performing elaborate dance routines requiring stamina, coordination, and physical exertion. The performances were hours long and physically demanding. When confronted with the dance competition videos, she claimed dancing was different because it was something she loved, and adrenaline allowed her to push through pain. Medical experts testified that competing in multi-hour dance competitions is medically incompatible with the fibromyalgia symptoms she described. The jury found against her, she was ordered to pay legal fees and was charged with fraud. Her fake fibromyalgia was destroyed by competition footage showing her dancing for hours when she claimed she could barely get out of bed. 23. A man claimed he'd been injured at work and developed depression and anxiety so severe he couldn't work or engage in social activities. He filed for workers' compensation and long-term disability. Psychiatric evaluations documented his reports of severe depression, social withdrawal, and inability to function. His claim was approved and he received benefits. The insurance company became suspicious when they couldn't verify his claimed complete social isolation. Investigators discovered his social media showed him traveling internationally, attending parties, and engaging in numerous social activities. His posts showed him at concerts, sporting events, restaurants, and social gatherings, directly contradicting his claims of severe depression preventing social interaction. When confronted, he claimed he was faking happiness in the photos but was actually suffering inside. Psychiatric experts reviewed the evidence and testified that someone with the level of depression and anxiety he described couldn't maintain the active social life documented in his social media. His benefits were terminated, he was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. He was convicted and ordered to repay benefits. His fake depression was exposed by his own social media showing an active social life, contradicting his claimed isolation. 24. A woman claimed she'd fallen at work and injured her wrist, requiring surgery and leaving her unable to use her dominant hand for most activities. She filed for workers' compensation. After surgery, she claimed she couldn't grip objects, type, or perform tasks requiring hand coordination. Her employer's insurance company became suspicious when they saw her Facebook posts. Her social media showed her posting numerous selfies, which investigators noted required using her supposedly injured hand to hold and operate her phone. More importantly, they found videos she'd posted of herself playing piano at an advanced level, an activity absolutely requiring fine motor control and strength in both hands, including the injured one. When confronted with the piano videos, she claimed she was left-handed and the injured hand wasn't her dominant hand. But her medical records clearly stated the injured wrist was on her dominant right hand, and the piano videos showed both hands playing complex pieces. Her workers' comp benefits were reduced, she was charged with exaggerating her limitations, and was convicted. Her fake wrist limitations were exposed by her own videos of herself playing piano, requiring exactly the hand function she claimed not to have. 25. A man claimed he'd been in a car accident that caused him to develop PTSD so severe he couldn't leave his house. He filed a personal injury lawsuit seeking $600,000 for psychological damages. His medical records documented his reports of severe anxiety, panic attacks, and agoraphobia, allegedly stemming from the accident. Psychological evaluations supported his claims of significant impairment. The defense attorneys hired investigators who found his Instagram account was full of travel photos from the period he claimed he couldn't leave his house. The posts showed him traveling to multiple states and countries, visiting tourist attractions, and dining at restaurants. Each post was geotagged with the location, proving he'd been traveling extensively while claiming he was housebound with PTSD. When confronted with the travel evidence, he claimed a family member had posted old photos on his account. But the posts included current news references and interactions with people provably taken during the time frame of his supposed agoraphobia. The lawsuit was dismissed, he was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. His fake PTSD and agoraphobia were destroyed by his own social media documenting his extensive travels. 26. A woman claimed she'd injured her neck in a car accident causing chronic pain and requiring her to wear a neck brace. She sued the other driver for $250,000. She wore the neck brace to all medical appointments, depositions, and court appearances. Her medical records documented her complaints of severe neck pain and limited range of motion. The defense attorneys hired investigators who conducted surveillance. Video footage showed her not wearing the neck brace when she wasn't at medical or legal appointments. More damaging, the footage showed her teaching yoga classes, demonstrating poses requiring significant neck flexibility and movement. The video clearly showed her head and neck moving through full range of motion as she instructed students and demonstrated various yoga positions. When confronted with the yoga teaching video, she claimed she only taught gentle restorative yoga that didn't require neck movement. But the video showed her teaching and demonstrating advanced poses including inversions and backbends, requiring significant neck strength and flexibility. The lawsuit was dismissed, she was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. Her fake neck injury was destroyed by surveillance showing her teaching yoga, requiring exactly the neck mobility she claimed to have lost. 27. A man claimed he'd been injured at work with a concussion that left him with severe cognitive problems, including memory loss and confusion. He filed for workers' compensation and long-term disability. Neuropsychological testing showed impaired performance on memory and cognitive tasks. He appeared confused and forgetful at medical appointments. His claim was approved. The insurance company became suspicious when they noticed inconsistencies in his reported symptoms. They hired investigators who discovered he was successfully managing a small business, requiring bookkeeping, customer interactions, and complex decision-making. Surveillance showed him meeting with clients, reviewing financial documents, and conducting business operations requiring exactly the cognitive functions he claimed to have lost. When confronted, he claimed the business was simple and didn't require much thinking. But investigators had documented him managing inventory, negotiating contracts, and handling accounting, all cognitively demanding tasks. Medical experts testified that successfully running a business is incompatible with the cognitive impairment he'd claimed. His benefits were terminated, he was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. He was convicted and ordered to repay nearly $70,000 in fraudulent benefits. His fake cognitive problems were exposed by evidence of him successfully running a business requiring the mental functions he claimed not to have. 28. A woman claimed she'd fallen at a shopping mall and injured her back so severely she needed to use a motorized scooter for mobility. She sued the mall for $800,000. She arrived at all medical appointments and legal proceedings in a motorized scooter, claiming she couldn't walk more than a few steps without severe pain. Her medical records documented her reports of debilitating back pain and inability to stand or walk. The mall's attorneys hired investigators who discovered she was volunteering at an animal shelter. Surveillance footage from the shelter showed her walking dogs, bending to clean kennels, and engaging in physical activities, requiring significant back strength and mobility. The video showed her walking long distances, lifting bags of dog food, and performing tasks completely inconsistent with needing a scooter for mobility. When confronted with the animal shelter footage, she claimed those were rare good days where she pushed through pain. But the footage showed consistent activity over multiple visits spanning weeks. Medical experts testified that someone with her claimed back injury couldn't perform those activities. The lawsuit was dismissed, she was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. Her fake back injury requiring a scooter was destroyed by surveillance, showing her walking dogs and performing physical labor at an animal shelter. 29. A man claimed he'd injured his hand at work with nerve damage, leaving him with permanent numbness and inability to feel sensation in his fingers. He filed for workers' compensation and permanent disability. Medical examinations documented his reports of complete loss of sensation. Neurological testing showed he didn't respond to sensory stimuli on his hand. His claim was approved and he received substantial benefits. The insurance company hired a medical expert to conduct surveillance testing. The doctor arranged situations where the man's supposedly numb hand would naturally react if he had sensation, like placing a hot cup where his hand would touch it. His hand immediately reacted to the heat, pulling away in a normal protective response. Additional testing caught him demonstrating normal sensory responses with his supposedly numb hand in situations where he didn't realize he was being tested. Medical experts testified that his reflexive responses proved he had normal sensation and had been faking numbness. His benefits were terminated, he was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. He was convicted and ordered to repay over $50,000. His fake nerve damage was exposed by medical surveillance catching his normal sensory reactions when he didn't know he was being tested. 30. A woman claimed she'd been in a car accident that caused her to develop chronic fatigue syndrome, so severe she could barely function and was bedridden most of the time. She sued for $500,000, claiming the accident had destroyed her quality of life. Her medical records documented her reports of extreme exhaustion and inability to perform basic daily activities. Her physicians noted she appeared fatigued during appointments. The defense attorneys investigated her background and discovered she was training for and completed an Ironman triathlon during the period she claimed to be bedridden with chronic fatigue. The Ironman requires swimming 2.4 miles, biking 112 miles, and running a marathon, an extreme endurance event. Race results and photos confirmed her participation and completion. When confronted with the Ironman evidence, she claimed that was before her symptoms got severe. But the race date was in the middle of the period she was claiming complete disability. The lawsuit was dismissed, she was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. Her fake chronic fatigue syndrome was destroyed by proof she'd completed an Ironman triathlon during the time she claimed she was bedridden. 31. A man claimed he'd injured his back at work and had such severe sciatica that he couldn't sit for more than a few minutes. He filed for workers' compensation. Medical examinations documented his reports of severe leg pain radiating from his back. He claimed he had to stand or lie down constantly. His claim was approved. His employer's insurance company hired investigators after coworkers reported seeing him working a second job. Surveillance showed him working as a long-haul truck driver, sitting behind the wheel for hours at a time, driving cross-country. Truck driving requires sitting in one position for extended periods, exactly what he claimed he couldn't do. GPS records from the truck confirmed he'd driven routes lasting 8 to 10 hours at a time. When confronted, he claimed he'd been trying to work through the pain to make money. Medical experts testified that someone with the severe sciatica he'd described couldn't sit for hours driving a truck. His workers' comp was terminated, he was charged with fraud and was prosecuted. He was convicted and ordered to pay restitution. His fake sciatica preventing sitting was destroyed by evidence of him working as a truck driver, sitting for hours daily. 32. A woman claimed she'd fallen at a grocery store and injured her shoulder, requiring surgery and leaving her with permanent limitations. She sued the store for $400,000. After surgery, she claimed she couldn't raise her arm or perform overhead activities. Her medical records documented restricted range of motion. The store's attorneys hired investigators who discovered she was working as a professional house painter. Surveillance footage showed her painting ceilings and high walls, requiring her to raise her arms above her head repeatedly for hours. The video clearly showed her painting overhead with the arm she'd claimed had severe limitations after surgery. When confronted with the painting footage, she claimed she was just helping a friend and only did a little work. But investigators had documented her working multiple painting jobs over several weeks, clearly operating as a professional painter. Medical experts testified that overhead painting work is medically impossible for someone with her claimed post-surgical shoulder limitations. The lawsuit was dismissed. She was charged with fraud and was prosecuted. Her fake shoulder limitations were destroyed by surveillance, showing her working as a painter. Requiring overhead arm use, she claimed she couldn't perform. 33. A man claimed he'd been injured in a workplace accident that caused him to lose his sense of smell and taste. He filed for workers' compensation seeking substantial damages for loss of enjoyment of life. He told doctors he couldn't smell or taste anything, which he claimed severely affected his quality of life and mental health. His claim was approved. The insurance company became suspicious when they noticed he was posting restaurant reviews online during the period he claimed to have no sense of taste. The reviews included detailed descriptions of flavors, textures, and taste profiles. Investigators saved all his reviews, which clearly demonstrated he could taste food normally. When confronted with his restaurant reviews, he claimed he was writing what other people told him about the food. But the reviews were written in first person, describing his own taste experience. Medical experts testified that his detailed taste descriptions proved he had normal taste and smell function. His workers' comp claim was terminated, he was charged with fraud and was prosecuted. His fake loss of taste and smell was destroyed by his own detailed restaurant reviews describing flavors. 34. A woman claimed she'd been rear-ended in traffic and developed such severe anxiety about driving that she needed transportation assistance and couldn't work due to inability to commute. She sued for damages including cost of ongoing transportation and lost wages. Her medical records documented her reports of severe driving-related anxiety and panic attacks. Psychological evaluations supported her claims of driving phobia. The defense attorneys hired investigators who obtained her car's OnStar data showing she'd been driving thousands of miles during the period she claimed she couldn't drive due to anxiety. Her own vehicle's GPS tracking proved she'd been driving regularly, taking long trips and commuting to various locations. When confronted with the GPS evidence, she claimed someone else had been driving her car. But video surveillance showed her alone in the car at various times. The lawsuit was dismissed, she was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. Her fake driving phobia was destroyed by her own car's GPS data, proving she'd been driving extensively during the period she claimed she couldn't drive. 35. A man claimed he'd injured his knee at work and developed such severe arthritis that he needed a full knee replacement and would have permanent disability. He filed for workers' compensation and long-term disability. Medical imaging showed some arthritis, but orthopedic surgeons noted the severity seemed inconsistent with his claimed pain level. He walked with a severe limp and used a cane. His claim was approved and surgery was scheduled. Before the surgery, the insurance company hired investigators who filmed him playing competitive tennis in a league. The video showed him running, jumping, pivoting, and performing athletic movements that would be medically impossible with the severe arthritis and knee damage requiring replacement. When confronted with the tennis footage, he claimed he was playing through the pain to stay active before surgery. But medical experts testified that someone needing knee replacement due to severe arthritis cannot play competitive tennis. His surgery was canceled, his benefits were terminated, he was charged with fraud and was prosecuted. He was convicted and ordered to pay restitution. His fake knee arthritis requiring replacement was destroyed by video of him playing competitive tennis. 36. A woman claimed she'd been in a car accident that caused her to develop vision problems including severe light sensitivity and blurred vision that prevented her from working or driving. She sued for $350,000. She wore very dark sunglasses at all times and claimed she couldn't tolerate normal light levels. Her medical records documented her complaints of light sensitivity and visual disturbances. The defense attorneys hired investigators who discovered she was working as a photographer. Her professional photography website showed her recent work from the period she claimed to have vision problems. The job required normal vision to compose shots, use camera equipment, and work in various lighting conditions. Investigators hired her for a photography session and confirmed she had normal vision throughout the shoot. When confronted with evidence of her photography work, she claimed she was working through her symptoms. Medical experts testified that professional photography work is impossible for someone with the light sensitivity and vision problems she described. The lawsuit was dismissed, she was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. Her fake vision problems were destroyed by evidence of her working as a professional photographer requiring normal eyesight. 37. A man claimed he'd injured his back at work so severely that he was medically retired and given permanent total disability status. He received substantial monthly disability payments. He had been granted this status based on medical evaluations showing severe spinal damage. Years later, the insurance company received an anonymous tip that he was more active than his disability suggested. Investigators conducted surveillance and discovered he was working as a roofer, one of the most physically demanding jobs requiring extensive back strength and mobility. Video footage showed him carrying heavy materials, climbing ladders, kneeling on sloped roofs, and performing labor-intensive work for hours. When confronted, he claimed he was just helping friends occasionally, but investigators had documented him working regularly for a roofing company and receiving payment. Medical experts testified that roofing work is categorically impossible for someone with total permanent disability from back injury. His disability payments were terminated retroactively, he was charged with fraud for years of false claims, and was prosecuted. He was convicted and ordered to repay over $200,000 in fraudulent benefits, plus served jail time. His fake total disability was destroyed by surveillance showing him working as a roofer. 38. A woman claimed she'd fallen at a hotel and injured her hip requiring surgery and leaving her with a permanent limp. She sued the hotel for $450,000. She walked with a pronounced limp and used a cane at all medical and legal proceedings. Her medical records documented her hip pain and limited mobility. The hotel's attorneys hired investigators who discovered she was teaching Zumba fitness classes. Surveillance footage from the gym where she taught showed her leading high-energy dance fitness classes with no limp, no cane, and performing jumping and hip-intensive dance moves. The video clearly showed her demonstrating choreography requiring full hip mobility and strength. When confronted with the Zumba teaching footage, she claimed those classes were low-impact modifications. But the video showed her doing high-impact moves including jumping jacks and hopping. Medical experts testified that teaching Zumba is medically impossible for someone with her claimed hip injury and permanent limp. The lawsuit was dismissed, she was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. Her fake hip injury and permanent limp were destroyed by video of her teaching high-impact Zumba classes. 39. A man claimed he'd developed chemical sensitivity from workplace exposure that made him unable to tolerate common scents and chemicals. He filed for workers' compensation claiming he couldn't be around perfumes, cleaning products, or various chemicals. His claim was approved and he was given accommodations including working from home. The insurance company became suspicious when they couldn't find evidence of him seeking treatment for chemical sensitivity. Investigators discovered he was working part-time at a hardware store, a workplace full of paints, solvents, pesticides, and other chemicals. Surveillance showed him working in the paint department, mixing paints, handling chemicals, and breathing the same fumes he claimed made him severely ill. When confronted, he claimed he wore a respirator at the hardware store. But surveillance footage showed him working without any protective equipment in the chemical-filled environment he claimed he couldn't tolerate. His workers' comp was terminated, he was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. His fake chemical sensitivity was destroyed by evidence of him working in a hardware store surrounded by the chemicals he claimed made him sick. 40. A woman claimed she'd been injured in a slip and fall at a restaurant and developed such severe PTSD that she couldn't work or go out in public. She sued for $500,000, claiming psychological trauma from the fall. Her medical records documented panic attacks, anxiety, and agoraphobia. Psychological evaluations supported her claims of severe PTSD, preventing normal life activities. The defense attorneys investigated and found she was working as a real estate agent, a job requiring meeting clients at various properties and going into public regularly. They obtained video from open houses she'd hosted, showing her interacting normally with potential buyers, giving tours of homes, and engaging in public activities. When confronted with evidence of her real estate work, she claimed those were rare occasions where she'd forced herself to work despite severe anxiety. But investigators had documented consistent real estate activity, including multiple open houses, client meetings, and property showings over several months. Medical experts testified that working successfully as a real estate agent is incompatible with the PTSD and agoraphobia she'd described. The lawsuit was dismissed, she was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. Her fake PTSD preventing public activities was destroyed by evidence of her working as a real estate agent requiring extensive public interaction. 41. A man claimed he'd injured his leg at work with nerve damage causing foot drop, a condition where he couldn't lift the front of his foot when walking. He filed for workers' compensation and permanent disability. Medical examinations documented his apparent foot drop and he wore a special brace. Neurological tests showed abnormal findings consistent with his claims. His claim was approved. The insurance company hired investigators after receiving tips that his injury might be exaggerated. Surveillance footage captured him at a gym doing exercises that required normal foot and leg function, including calf raises and jumping rope. Activities medically impossible with genuine foot drop. The video clearly showed him lifting his foot normally during exercise. Medical experts reviewed the footage and testified that his gym activities proved his foot drop was faked. Further medical examination designed to catch malingering confirmed he was intentionally creating abnormal test results. His benefits were terminated, he was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. He was convicted and ordered to pay restitution. His fake foot drop nerve damage was destroyed by gym footage showing normal foot function and medical testing catching his intentional faking. 42. A woman claimed she'd been in a car accident that caused her to develop seizures requiring medication and restrictions on activities. She sued the other driver for $600,000, claiming the seizures prevented her from working and had destroyed her quality of life. Her medical records documented multiple reported seizures, and she was prescribed anti-seizure medication. Video EEG monitoring at a hospital showed no seizure activity, but she claimed they occurred unpredictably. The defense attorneys hired investigators who conducted extensive surveillance. Over weeks of observation, they never witnessed any seizure activity. They also discovered she had a commercial driver's license, which would have been revoked if she had genuine seizures. DMV records showed she'd renewed her CDL during the period she claimed to be having frequent seizures, something that requires medical clearance confirming no seizure disorder. When confronted with the evidence, she claimed her seizures were well controlled by medication. But medical experts testified that someone with the frequent uncontrolled seizures she described in her lawsuit couldn't pass the medical examination required for a CDL. The lawsuit was dismissed, she was charged with fraud, and was prosecuted. Her fake seizure disorder was destroyed by the fact that she'd maintained a commercial driver's license requiring medical certification that she didn't have seizures. 43. A man claimed he'd hurt his hands at work with repetitive stress injury that left him unable to use keyboards or perform fine motor tasks. He filed for workers' compensation and was approved for benefits. Medical examinations showed some signs of repetitive stress. He claimed he couldn't type, write, or perform detailed handwork. His employer's insurance company hired investigators after IT staff noticed someone was accessing his social media accounts and posting frequently during the time he claimed he couldn't type. Investigators documented that during the period he claimed his hands were too injured to use a keyboard, he was averaging hundreds of social media posts per week, including lengthy written posts that would require extensive typing. They also found he was playing online video games requiring intensive keyboard and mouse use. When confronted with his social media and gaming activity, he claimed he used voice to text. but many of his posts included formatting and corrections inconsistent with dictation. Gaming logs showed precise movements requiring manual keyboard control. His workers' comp was reduced, he was charged with exaggerating his injury, and was convicted. His fake hand injury preventing keyboard use was destroyed by evidence of his extensive social media posting and online gaming requiring exactly the hand and typing function he claimed not to have. 44. A woman claimed she'd fallen at work and injured her back so severely she became addicted to pain medication, requiring expensive rehabilitation treatment. She sued her employer for negligence and costs of addiction treatment. Her medical records documented her reports of severe pain and prescriptions for opioid painkillers. Addiction treatment records showed multiple rehab admissions. She claimed the injury and subsequent pain medication need had destroyed her life. Her employer's attorneys investigated and discovered she'd had a documented addiction to pain medication for years before the alleged workplace injury. Medical records predating the injury showed a long history of doctor shopping, emergency room visits seeking narcotics, and previous addiction treatment. The workplace injury she blamed for her addiction had occurred after she was already addicted. When confronted with her pre-injury addiction history, she claimed the workplace injury had made her existing problem worse. But medical experts testified that her addiction pattern hadn't changed before and after the alleged injury. The lawsuit was dismissed because she couldn't prove the injury caused her addiction. She was charged with fraud for falsely blaming a workplace injury for a pre-existing condition. Her fake injury-caused addiction was destroyed by medical records, proving she'd been addicted to pain medication before the injury she claimed caused the addiction. 45. And finally, a man claimed he'd been injured in a car accident and developed severe lower back pain requiring him to use a wheelchair full-time. He sued the other driver for $1 million. He appeared in a wheelchair at all medical appointments, depositions, and court hearings. His medical records documented his claims of being unable to walk or stand without severe pain. Expert witnesses testified on his behalf about the severity of his supposed disability. The defense attorneys hired investigators who conducted extensive surveillance. Over several weeks, they captured video footage of him getting out of his wheelchair, folding it up, putting it in his car, and walking normally, including going hiking, playing basketball, and doing yard work. The surveillance showed that he only used the wheelchair when going to medical or legal appointments. The rest of the time, he walked normally with no apparent problems. When the dramatic surveillance footage was played in court showing him standing up from his wheelchair and walking away, then returning later and sitting back in it to go to a medical appointment, the jury was visibly shocked. His own attorney requested a recess to speak with him. The man eventually admitted he'd been exaggerating his injuries. The lawsuit was not only dismissed, but the judge referred him for criminal prosecution. He was charged with fraud, attempted theft, and perjury for his false testimony under oath. He was convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison, plus ordered to pay the defendant's legal costs exceeding $100,000. His fake wheelchair-requiring back injury was destroyed by surveillance showing him only using the wheelchair for appointments while walking, hiking, and playing sports the rest of the time. The case became a training example for insurance investigators and legal professionals about the importance of surveillance in suspected fraud cases. The brutal truth about faking injuries for money is that insurance companies aren't stupid. They hire investigators, review medical records carefully, conduct surveillance, and have seen every scam before. These people thought they could fake injuries, collect money, and never get caught. But they forgot that investigators can watch them. Cameras are everywhere, social media documents everything, and medical science can often detect when someone is faking. These cases prove that insurance fraud is far riskier than people think. Not only did these scammers not get the money they wanted, they ended up with criminal records, had to repay money they'd already collected, paid massive legal fees and fines, lost their jobs, and in some cases went to prison. They tried to get rich quick through fraud and ended up far worse off than if they'd just been honest. The real stupidity wasn't just the fake injuries, it was thinking they could maintain the deception 24/7, that no one would check their social media, that investigators wouldn't follow them, or that medical science couldn't detect malingering. In an era of surveillance cameras, GPS tracking, social media, and sophisticated medical testing, faking an injury requires maintaining a lie every moment of every day, and these people couldn't do it. Subscribe if you want to remember that insurance companies investigate claims they think are suspicious, that surveillance footage and social media posts have destroyed countless fraud attempts, and that the small chance of getting away with insurance fraud isn't worth the near certainty of criminal charges, massive fines, and possible prison time when you get caught posting gym videos while claiming you can't walk.